From the age of 3 to the age of 12, I was molested by 16 people. Hello, my name is BossBeauty and welcome to another video. Tonight I'm going to be talking about what happened to me at age 3 to 12 years of age. From the age of 3 to the age of 12, I was molested by 16 people. The pastor of my grandma's church, a teenage girl, used to take me up under her house and hunch me. I'm letting you know, this is the very first memory I have. Like, I can't remember anything before this age. This is it. Okay, like, this is my first memory. And my mama used to, then at the time I didn't know where my mama was going. I just knew she used to leave the house with my so-called godmama, whose name was Niecy. And Niecy had a boyfriend named Curtis. And my mama and Niecy used to go. And my mama would leave me with Curtis. And Curtis he used to make me do things with my mouth on his private area at 3. And the apartment would be so quiet, right? I could hear it crack, and I would jump up and he would say, "Oh, the house is just waking up." And every time I tell this story, I could still smell the scent of his room. Like, you know how a man or a boy room smell when it's only them standing in it, even though he had a girlfriend? He had a girlfriend, but even though he had a girlfriend, his room smelled like, it just smelled like a male body odor. And I could still smell it every time I tell this story. And I have smelled that same smell throughout my years of living, every blue moon, going to someone's house. So with that being said, for what reason, I don't really remember if I was even able to tell anybody. Like, I was 3. You know, every time my mama would leave me home with him, because we stayed there, every time my mama would leave me home with him, the same thing would happen every single time. So this happened on many occasions with Curtis, this person. My oldest daughter is from my cousin, from him doing things to me. I had an Uncle Joe on my daddy's side, which was like my great uncle. And his wife was my granddaddy's sister. And she would do a lot of cooking when they came to visit us from Lake City, because she was a caterer and my grandma loved her cooking. And when it was ingredients or something missing that they needed, they would send my Uncle Joe to the store to get whatever they needed, to the grocery store. And my grandma would say, Rhoda, that's my nickname that she gave me, "Do you want to ride with your Uncle Joe?" And or my Uncle Joe will offer. Now, every time they came to visit, this happened, right? And I would ride to the store with him. And I remember one day we coming from the grocery store in my neighborhood, not far from where my grandma stayed. It used to be a hotel at the intersection, and a light was there. And at the light, he pointed over to the hotel and said, "One day when you get out of school, maybe I'll take you over there." When I used to sit down, he would And mind you, I would sit next to him because when we was alone, he would always tell me to sit by him. And then he would put his hand out for me to sit on his hand. And one day my granddaddy called him. He was like, Rhoda, don't sit on your Uncle Joe hand. And the whole time, he didn't know Uncle Joe was putting his hand out for me to sit on it on purpose. Like, as an adult, I wonder, and I always say, well, dang, did he not think why my Uncle Joe would have his hand out in the first place instead of telling me as a little girl not to sit on his hand? Instead, he should have been saying, Joe, why you got your hand out? You know, why is your hand just out like this on the sofa? As a child, I didn't think that way, but as an adult, of me repeatedly thinking of all the things that had happened to me over and over again, a lot of things be like, dang. When I finally told my grandma, I whispered in her ear, and she told me, do not tell my granddaddy. It would kill him. Do not tell my granddaddy. And I didn't. Because, I mean, that was my grandma. My mama died when I was 8. So with that being said, that was like my mama. She told me not to say nothing, so I didn't say anything. The whole time, it was a plethora of things throughout the years that happened to me that I did not tell any adult until I got pregnant with my oldest daughter. And at the age of 12, it was like, it's evidence here now, so what am I going to do? I have to say something. I have no choice. But we'll fast forward to that before it's over. And the next molestation after my Uncle Joe was Mr. Holmes. Mr. Holmes was my mama friend. Again, someone my mama used to leave me with. She used to run the streets. My mama was in the streets. And she would leave me home with him in his house because she stayed with Mr. Holmes. So, one morning, she had left me with Mr. Holmes. I'm not sure if I was there all night by myself with Mr. Holmes or did she leave early that morning. But I know this particular morning was the first time the encounter happened, right? He was sitting on the sofa and I had woke up thinking I had to go to school, but again, my mama wasn't there. And this is another person who made me do things with my mouth on his private area. Mr. Holmes. That happened on multiple occasions. Now still, I'm just a little girl. I'm still little. 3, 4, 5. After Mr. Holmes, and I may not be saying all of these in order, but I'm going to say what I can remember in order the best way I can. The best way I can remember. It was the teenage girl. My mama stayed in a rooming house, and next to the rooming house, the teenage girl stayed with her family. And you know these old houses that be lifted off the ground and you can see kind of up under them? They be like sitting on, I guess cinder blocks maybe. And you can clearly see, like, if you get on your knees, you could crawl up under it. Old-fashioned house that sit off the ground. She would take me in the backyard, crawl up under the house, and tell me to crawl up under there. And then get on top of me and do things to me. On my mama's side, it's been numerous family members do things to me. My mama died, and I had to go stay with my grandma. And my mother's brother, her little brother, Michael, used to do stuff to me. And I had got on my knees when I was 8, and prayed and asked God. This was my first time ever praying. But I was always in the church, going to church with my grandparents on both sides of my family. So I had got on my knees and prayed and asked God to get me out of the house before the month was up. And this was the month of October. And on the very last day, he was getting me and my little sister out the house. Now, mind you, my little sister is from my mom. My mom only had 2 of us. My daddy only had me. He had 2 brothers. Neither one of them had kids. I'm my grandma only grandchild on my daddy's side. And I'm my daddy only child, naturally. And because my little sister didn't have anywhere to go, the DCF, then HRS, CPS in some places, had asked my daddy, could my little sister come over there until they found her placement. And he obliged. Me and my little sister is 4 years apart. And when I prayed and asked God to get me out the house before the month up, and them people was coming to get me, the Lord sent people to rescue me before the month was up, just like I asked him to. And from then on, can't nobody tell me anything, because that was just the beginning of him coming to my rescue. That was the beginning of our relationship. That was the beginning of phase. That was phase 1, the beginning. So I often used to think, like, Lord, I know I have to be some type of chosen, because you have brought me through so many things, like harsh, devastating, heartbreaking, and I'm still sane, and I'm not strung out on drugs, and I'm not selling myself. I could be so many places. Years later, after I became an adult and had time to process and think and marinate and soak and become depressed and use a lot of my time wasted so much time in my life thinking, reliving, asking God why you would allow me to go through all this when you have all the power in your hand and you could have changed anything at any moment, but still you allowed me to go through all these things. For years I could not understand why I couldn't understand it. Up until 3 years ago. All that time wasted. Still being productive, but not being as productive as I know I can be or could have been. Still living my life, but never as happy as I know I could be. Just going on in this world. Because then anyone who would have an encounter with me, I'm always thinking about the person who done threatened my life, the person who done threatened my mama's life, the person who said, if you don't let me do it, I'm going to do it to your mama. It took me a long time to get his why. Everybody have their journey to live, their path to walk. And that was mine. And that was the beginning. That was the beginning of a lot of devastating things that would later on happen in my life. Unbeknownst to me, I had no idea. And even while all those other devastating things was happening in my life, I still had to deal with what I had been through as a child. But that's just a brief I had to get over. I had to let out the most difficult part. After I tell my entire journey, I would then have a Q&A. Hopefully I'll be able to go live then, and or have questions sent to one of my social media accounts or emails or however the case may be. But that was the hardest part. And I'm so glad it's over with. And with that being said, I need a break now. It took a lot for me to get that out. Thank you guys so much for listening. And I understand, to all the people who have been through what I've been through, I understand. And I just feel like it's time to stand up. It's time to speak up. It's time to fight. It's time to have eyes. It's time to watch. Listen. It's time to listen. This has been going on way too long. You know how many stories I have heard, and the Lord kept dropping stuff in my lap and bringing stuff down my timeline. So much, so many things, so many stories he kept showing me for me to come out with my own story, like confirming, giving me confirmation after confirmation after confirmation after confirmation. And I kept bucking and bucking and bucking. Tired of running now. I'm tired of running. I just had to surrender, and that's why I'm here. And I thank you for being here. I'll see y'all in the next video. Thank you.